What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with. We're going to talk about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that will help you knock down some of the prisons you've built up in your own mind. Folks, today I've got my man here, Gerald Murphy. And Gerald, and I never called you Gerald, so I'm not going to call you that. I'm going to call you Murph.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm used to.
But you just...
I tell you what, all my good closest friends call me Murph.
All right. Well, then we'll just roll with that.
All right.
I don't know if I ever called you Gerald except for just now.
You know what? I don't think you ever had.
But, Murph, you just told me that you're living in Lawrence, Kansas, and so that's You're in Jayhawk country. So here we are again. We've got a Missouri Tiger and a Jayhawk on the same podcast. That's how we come together right here.
That's the way we build a great family.
That's right. That's how we build that blended family.
Yeah, you got to have somebody you get beef with a little bit,
Well, we're gonna
I don't have a problem beating up on Missouri.
We're gonna get spanked so bad this year; it's gonna be embarrassing. Oh man!
Hey, you never know what could happen.
You never know. So Murph, take me back. We were just sharing a little bit about you growing up as a kid before we got on here. Walk me back into your world growing up, and I know you played sports, and just let everybody know kind of what Murph was like growing up as a kid.
Well, I should say, I'm always toot my own horn a little bit.
Well,
I would say I was a pretty outgoing kid, class clown, the normal. Had a very good upbringing, though. Really good upbringing, Cassidy, which people should understand. Where you come from doesn't necessarily mean where you're headed to.
Very true.
Like I said, I was raised in the church. My parents divorced real early. So I ended up staying with my mom like most children do, go with their mom in a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And we lived in Arkansas through most of the 80s.
Okay.
So I had that Southern upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And around those older Southern women. So you would imagine my grandmother was Madea. That's the way she was. Just
all right. I got it.
Tyler Perry Madea.
Yeah.
That was my grandmother, my great grandmother.
All right.
And she raised us with the yes sir, yes ma'am attitude. And like I said, we were in church probably 3 nights out of the week. So me hanging out in the streets at a really young age, that wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
They kept us guided on a straight and narrow path. That's why I ran into my football career, was through my great grandmother and my mother. She signed me up for Pop Warner football,
mm-hmm.
and I was put on a team on the west side of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and that's where my career took off at. I had a great childhood.
What was the position you liked to play, Murph?
Oh, man. Back then, before I put the weight on, I was a halfback and linebacker.
All right.
And
for anybody that knows, Murph's a big guy, but I just told him before we got on, I remember you could move. So you had that deceptive speed, man.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I can't take credit for about to get that. I got that from my daddy.
All right.
He's my dad's probably built like you. You know, he's tall, slender guy. He was a basketball player. I didn't quite pick up all his little basketball skills. Didn't rub off on me, but I picked up the football skills. I don't know where I got them from because nobody ever played any football on that side of the family.
Well, did you,
Besides
Murph? Did you have
cousin.
Murph? Did you have a relationship with your dad? Like, you know, even though they were divorced?
He had a very good relationship with my dad. Still to this day, he's my best friend. You know.
Okay.
He's my guy, my go-to guy. Just like Stroby is with his dad.
Yeah.
We had the same relationship. You know, the guy's been in my corner numerous times, and sometimes when I think he shouldn't have, he's always been there. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my dad would come and pick me up every summer and bring me to Kansas to meet my other side of my other family.
Mm-hmm.
So every summer, all through the 80s, I spent my summers in Topeka, Kansas.
And how many people, Murph, did you have on the other side of your family there, in the Kansas side?
On my dad's side?
Yeah.
My dad's side is, which is the Murphy side. They're a very small knit group. A family wasn't very large, but we're very known in Topeka as far as athletic-wise.
Mm-hmm.
My uncles, you know, ran softball teams, still do to this day. He has a bunch of softball teams. And so a lot of people know us through my Uncle Lloyd and my Uncle Lance through the sports thing.
Okay.
So
Murph, go ahead.
Me and my dad had a good relationship, you know. He was always there. You know, he wasn't one of those deadbeat dads. He paid his child support when I wasn't around. You know, he did everything he could, and he sent presents. If I called him, I needed something, he would send it, and he was right there for me. So I have no bad things to say about Pops. He's a good guy.
That's good. Brothers and sisters, Murph?
Yes, I have one older brother. His name was Andre LaRon Murphy. He passed away, unfortunately, while I was incarcerated with you at Leavenworth. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that incident. But remember, my brother was killed by the Nebraska Police Department.
I do remember that story.
I want to say Norfolk, Nebraska Police Department. Let's clarify that. I don't want to, say something that's not right. But the incident happened in Norfolk, North Carolina. Nebraska. He was, long story short, he was in a small town, black male with a young white girl. They were in a motel room, and naturally there was some drugs involved. I believe the story that I was told that my brother was high off K2.
It's nasty.
They said they found K2 in his blood, cocaine, and methamphetamine. That's what was found in his bloodstream after his autopsy was done. But I guess from what the story goes that they had been getting high. He smoking that stuff and flipped out. The girl said he called the cops. Then he ran out of the room and went to the front desk and had them call the cops. And the story gets kind of messed up right here. It gets kind of blurry. There's so many different people's stories. And from what I was told that the cops showed up, they got into altercation and scuffle. My brother actually broke away from them and ran across the parking lot. He was, by then, I guess, They apprehended him, had him handcuffed, and from there, this is where it all goes wrong, really goes wrong. They say that he tried to bite a cop. Now Cassidy was already handcuffed.
Mm-hmm.
There was 5 cops on the scene, and they said he tried to reach over and bite one. So when he did that, they said they tased him for his own behalf, which I can never understand. You tasing someone for their own safety, but that's the way they gave it to us. But they tased my brother in the head, which 50,000 volts or whatever I think these guns have. You can imagine what it did.
Mm.
So, yeah, it pretty much fried his brain, overloaded his brain, his heart. By the time they got him in the hospital, he was pronounced dead.
Mm. How old was he?
I would have said my brother was, I think it was about 45 when that happened.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. Because I remember we were in RDAP together when that happened.
Yeah.
It was towards the end of my RDAP.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the toughest news I would think you can have. Having a family member die when you're in prison, because you don't feel like, you never feel like you're plugged in to the outside world, but when something like that happens, you feel further away than you ever have.
Oh sure. Man, I felt so distant, and when you get news like that, it's just like all my memories of my big brother.
Yeah.
And me standing in that hallway on that payphone, having to get this news at 7:00 in the morning, right before we go to morning meeting. Mm. You know how we always go check before 7:00.
Right.
Got to check that computer.
That's right.
And so I got the emails. And I got 2 bad emails saying, "Call your mom immediately." And like 4 days prior to that, I had got the same emails. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, had passed away. Mm. And 4 days later, my brother was killed.
So you got 2 bad emails.
So I lost 2 good. Yeah, I lost 2 good people in the same week. Mm. You know, they say they go in pairs. So, and when I called my mom that morning, I told her right before she said anything, I said, "Please don't tell me somebody else has passed away." Mm. You know, because you automatically kind of know.
Yeah.
When you pick up that phone and make that call, you have that. I know something not quite right at home. So, and unfortunately, that was the bad news I had to take that morning.
How'd you handle that, Murph?
And, you know, there was a lot of guys that I got along with at the camp. Mm-hmm. I don't think I had an enemy, to be honest with you.
Well, you're a very likable guy. You always walking around with a smile, you know. I mean, always easy helping people. Yeah.
So the RDAP community, and I want to say the class that I came in with which was with you,
yeah,
and Oscar and all you guys.
Yeah.
Man, I wouldn't have made it through if it wasn't for you guys.
Yeah,
at that particular time, I needed a lot of shoulders to lean on and cry on.
Yeah.
And but you know, the first person who came and comforted me and sold me out of all the people on that campus, and a lot of people, we didn't really care too much for these guys, which was the CO. What's the tall guy's name that was always there in the morning?
Was it
Mac?
Yeah.
Yes.
Intimidating Mac, the tall.
As much as Mac was an asshole to people, that day he wasn't, he was
Yeah.
very concerned,
Yeah.
and he knew something was wrong.
Right.
He came out of that bubble, and as he came out, I caught eyes with him, and I just lost everything. All, I don't know what you would call it, all my energy, power, or whatever.
Yeah.
I just collapsed, hit the floor, and he picked me up. Said, "I don't know what's wrong right now, but he said, you stood me up. You know what I mean? And had me snap out of it for a second, get back to where I was at. Because I had just kind of at that point, my mind was nowhere near prison life at that point.
Oh no. Well, Murph, let's back up a little bit, because you were talking about getting into the football world, and I'm sure tell me a little bit about high school and then how that progressed into college for you.
Well, I went to when I was coming up, when I first moved to Kansas in '89. We lived on the east side of Topeka, and I met a group of guys that I'm real tight knit with still to this day. And we all played ball together and ran the streets together and all the whole 9 yards. And my dad started to see that I was venturing off in that street life.
Mm-hmm.
And with my dad being a military man, he's a Navy guy, real strict, but, firm, but loving, but firm.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Son, I got a surprise for you." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You will not be going to Topeka High," which was been the high school that all the East Side kids went to school at, which was a famous high school in Topeka, And I always wanted to be one of the Murphys to graduate. All the other Murphys graduated from Topeka High. Mm-hmm. How come I can't be one?
Uh-huh.
And he said, "Oh, no." He sent me to Jeff West. If anybody knows where that's in Meriden, Kansas. Small town, 3A. He ran into an old girlfriend of his from his younger years, and they rekindled, and she had a farm out there, and that's where I ended up at.
Wow.
And
what an adjustment.
Only black dude in the high school.
Wow.
We were the only black family in the county at that time.
What was that like? Murphy, what was that like being, that had to be one heck of an adjustment for somebody, you were 14 years old?
Yep. About 14. That was my freshman year.
Yeah.
And talk about a culture shock.
Yeah.
Man. I didn't know what to think. I remember going to the high school for physicals one day in the summertime, right before school started. And that's when I knew. I was like, wow, I'm looking around and all these kids are coming in, different ages. And, man, I'm not seeing anybody look like me.
Nobody showed up for physical that looks like you.
Nobody looking like me. I'm like, oh, my goodness, what did my dad do to me, I said, oh, man, he punished me a lot, but I said, God damn, he got me this time, So, but, Cassie, I made the best of it, I have, to this day, I have some of the best friends I've ever had come from Jeff West.
I'll be.
Come from that little small town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably happy to see you, Murph, show up, being a guy that could play football and fit right in. That would have been a big deal for that school.
Yes, it was. Because the funny thing was when the first day of football practice, first day of two-a-days, and the freshmen were all sitting out on the bench, and they had all the upperclassmen in the locker room, and they were getting their equipment and all that stuff. And I was the only lonely soldier. I was sitting on the end of the bench. Nobody's talking to me. And one kid walks up to me. and he's still my best friend to this day. His name is Jeff Lolly. He walked up to me, and he asked me my name, and then he asked me what position I played. And you could see all the other guys on the other end of the bench. They're all ear hustling and listening to what I was going to say. And I told him, I said, I play linebacker and halfback.
Mm-hmm.
You should have seen some of the guys' looks on their face of relief that I wasn't taking their position.
Yeah, exactly.
So automatically, they just knew I was going to be like I was doing something great.
Uh-huh.
Just, that's just because they've never had, at the time, a lot of those kids had never had any interaction with blacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing they ever had was what they saw on TV.
Yeah. Wow.
Which was cool. Like I said, and I ended up having a great 4 years at Jeff West.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to do it again, I'd go back to Jeff West.
And that's something.
Great teachers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had some great teachers out there that worked with me. I wasn't always the smartest guy in the classroom. And they worked with me one-on-one and got me up to speed. Compared to what I would have got at Topeka High.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which would have been a lot of kids in the classroom.
Right.
50 compared to like 15.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I needed more. Well, my dad had a sense of knowledge where he knew what I needed at that particular time. And that's what he went with.
That's a good dad.
Which worked out on both ends.
That's a good dad.
Yes, he is, man. He's always looking towards the future,
Mm-hmm.
He thinks for both of us, I'm pretty sure.
So Murph, so you went to college, you played football at JUCO. What did you do once you got done with that?
Well, once I got done with that, my JUCO career didn't last very long. Unfortunately, I was expelled from school. I was kicked out of school for doing something I had no business doing.
All right.
My dad was one of them guys, he was in the house by 12:30. Well, most of my friends in high school was partying at 12:30. I was walking in the front door. So I kind of lived that structured lifestyle. And when I got to JUCO, man, Cassidy, I got wild.
You're set free.
Yeah, I was free, and I had a cousin named Mike Murphy that was there playing free safety for Cawkinsville. Great football player for them. He helped me get into Cawkinsville. And he played free safety and I played strong safety. And we had a good time. Like I said, I just got to partying too much, and the coaches kind of got upset about me breaking curfew, and how that whole 9 yards go. You was a college guy.
Yeah.
And I ended up eventually just getting kicked out, and I ended up going to Highland after that. And Highland wasn't the fit for me, and I ended up saying, screw it. Let's try life and see what life has in store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I started meeting some people that I should have probably never met.
So did you know, Murph, when that went on, because you were taking steps, away from the structured life, the things that you knew right from wrong. When you started getting into that group, were you feeling like, I don't know if I need to be here, or was it kind of liberating and thinking, this is kind of freedom and I'm doing what I want to do? And what were your thoughts then?
I knew my dad was going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew he was going to be firm on his decision, what he was going to do with me from that point on. So he told me, well, you know, if you're not going to go to school, you need to work. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to take care of yourself. And so there was no option of that living at home. That wasn't an option anymore. So I had to go out and fend for myself to try to figure things out the best way I knew how. And fortunately, I got some family members that lived on that other side of the line. Mm-hmm. And naturally, I reached out to them as far as a comfort, mm-hmm. you know, a blanket, mm-hmm. security blanket. Mm-hmm. I knew if I pushed it on the shove, I could spend the night on somebody's couch, mm-hmm. or possibly in somebody's crack house.
Yeah,
that's just reality at that particular time. Me growing up, trying to find my way.
So, what all did you get into, Murph?
Well, my first introduction into the drug life was actually in high school, and being a methamphetamine guy, which is unheard of in the black community. Mm-hmm. Even at the time I was growing up, that was unheard of. Black men selling meth, oh my God, you know. And I just kind of dibbled and dabbled, you know, just doing stuff that high school kids did, you know. Mm-hmm. We didn't save money, we spent a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And I made a lot of money out there, Jeff West, doing the things I was doing. And I was just buying shoes and PlayStation games, you know. Mm-hmm. Put music in my car and things like that. Had no concept of money at that particular time. And so when I got out of college and came home, I knew that was a skill that I had, mm-hmm. that I could use to survive. And what I ended up doing, I just reached out to some people and got myself established and just went from there.
You know what I always think is interesting about that, Murph, is that the guys I've had conversations about that is that you're a good business mind when you have to set something up like that. Because, you know, I grew a business and, you know, you have to figure out, okay, here's my product. How do I distribute? How do I build sales? And you did all that. You just did it on the other side of the world, which is always interesting to me because a lot of the guys I've met at Leavenworth, they were running businesses. If they would have been flipped it, they would have built good businesses on whatever product they would have had to sell.
And, you know, I've always thought of that too, because you're not the only person who said that to me. Yeah. You know, they said, you got that niche, uh-huh. that you reach out to people and they connect with you so easily. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how good I would be, yeah. if I was in your shoes, just per se.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, I think, Murphy,
if we had to flip-flop positions, you know, you would be. Would I been as successful as Cassidy was with his company?
Murph, I'll tell you this though. I mean, you know, sales is sales and business is business. It just, you know, you ended up being in a business that, you know, was something every day you were in it. It was illegal, but you had figured out how to do it and you have the personality to do it. So yes, you would have been successful on the other side of the world because that's what it is. It's connections, it's relationships, it's the ability to figure out how do I get from point A to point B and how do I make that work so that I can make something back. And then you've got your margins, you know, what are you making? And it's all the same. It's all the same.
It's all the same. And, you know, they say that, you know. You know, I wish things would have been a little different. I wish I could have been successful in sales on the legal end. And hey, maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation, you know?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And one thing about it, Cassidy, I don't have no regrets, bro. It was a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, Murph,
I've seen a lot of things. I've
Murph,
seen a lot of things growing up.
yeah, I know you did. And that's, I mean, and you saw both sides of it. You had the structured world of your mom and your
Right.
dad, and then you had the unstructured, and you fell into that. And walk me into, Murph, when everything happened, like when it came down on you, what happened?
Like far as the government
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of it, and then it happened so unexpectedly. You know, I never so I have done a prison bid once before. I caught the federal case.
Mm-hmm.
When I came home after college, I was learning this game, you know, this street life game, and I was taking some bumps and bruises along the way. A lot of bumps and bruises that most kids that would have grew up on the east side of Topeka wouldn't have took those bumps and bruises because they would have took them at a young age. I never had that. So when I started doing this game, I jumped in it pretty much out of college.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite older. So I started to take my bumps and bruises, learning what to do and what not to do. And I caught a bunch of cases. I spent a lot of money getting out of those cases. Those state cases, you can pretty much, if you got money, you can buy your way out of those cases.
Mm-hmm.
You can't buy your way out of them feds. When them FBI guys, you can't pay your way out of that. And what happens is you keep building this caseload, these cases up on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, even though I'm getting probation or they're dismissing these cases, the ones that I am catching are steady stacking up on me. So I did a prison bid. I went to Lansing. I went to Norton. I did a 2.5 year bid the first time for sales of methamphetamines. Didn't learn shit. Just being honest with you. Went to prison, didn't learn nothing. Learned how to become a better criminal, to be honest with you. They put me around a bunch of old heads. And if you know me, Cassidy, I soak up game like a sponge.
Yeah.
I'm always listening. I'm always aware of what's going on around me. And, you know, I get along with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that can be what do you say, a bad omen for me or a curse.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can implement in any group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Blacks, white, purple, green, it don't matter.
Yeah, you adapt.
I'm in there, you know what I mean? And that was crazy about when I went to the Fed. I took that same concept I've always lived my life with, and I brought it to the Feds, and a lot of guys frowned upon it.
What do you?
A lot of my people,
Murph, what do you think?
of
Murph, what do you think was the biggest difference between the state and the federal prison?
Oh man, oh God, it's a lot. Well, one thing about the state, you're going to be around a lot of people that you probably grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to know them from somewhere down the line. And it was like, the state was like, when I got to Lansing, which was, 20 minutes, 30 minutes from Topeka, everybody in my neighborhood was there.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it was just like being back home.
Mm.
It's like I never left the world. And when you go to the state prison, to me, it was like I never left the streets.
That's interesting.
Because everything was right there. The drugs, everything but the women were there, you know? And if you had enough money, you could get them. That was no problem either. Visitation, you can imagine what happens on visitations. But that first prison bid, I didn't learn anything. I just did the time and was ready to get out of there and start part two of my so-called drug career. Because that's what I was, when I was in the state, all I was planning on was how I was going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I was in that state of mind that doing right was an option. I was going to build this drug dealer. I had in my mind that I was going to be this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be this guy that they talked about in the city.
Mm-hmm. That was your goal.
And it's a stupid goal, but that's what my goal was at that particular time. My mind was clouded, drugs and alcohol, I was still doing that stuff when I was in prison.
Well, tell me, Murph, you said that it was a surprise. It was unexpected. What happened?
On my Fed, because I never, at that particular time that I caught my Fed case, believe it or not, I was transitioning my way out of the game. Something had happened to me to where I just got really tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing drugs too. I was doing the drug that I was selling. And someone just said, man, you got to do something different. And so I enrolled in culinary art school. As you know, I like to cook.
I know. I remember. You could cook, Murph. That's appreciated too in prison.
And so I said, I'm going to try this. And the girlfriend I had at the time, we were both using, and she wasn't working, and she was pretty much living off me, and enjoyed. I supplied her everything, and it upset her because she knew that the pipeline was coming to an end. The goal line was coming to an end, and so I really tried to get this going. And I was working home health aide at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I work from 9 at night to 9 in the morning. I come home one morning and I pull up to my house and there's a white SUV sitting in my spot. So you know how we are about spots. So I'm like, who the hell's in my spot? So I was going to go check them. When I get ready to get out of the car, I lean up and I look through the back windshield, and I noticed the bars on the window.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Oh shit!" And I looked again. I said, "Oh my goodness!" And I looked over my girlfriend. I said, "That's undercover." No, at this time, nobody really knew I lived at this place. It was just me and her.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, man, how? And state of Kansas make you register. I was released in 2007. Was the very first year that they made you start registering.
So Murph, that night when you pulled in there and you noticed that van was there, what did you?
Oh man,
what'd you do?
One thing I didn't do, I didn't panic.
Yeah.
I said, hold on. This is a high crime neighborhood. They could be somebody else down the street they watching.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell her, I said, hey, ease. I said, back it up, ease on out, and go on around them, and we'll see what happens after you get around them. So as we back it out, and we got to go around the guys because they're in front of us. And he looks, I'm leaning back in the back, I'm leaning down in the seat. And he looks at me and I look at him and he smiles. And we go on around him. And I was like, shit, he's going to pull out behind us. I don't know they're going to stop us.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't do anything.
Okay.
They let me go. So now I'm thinking, maybe they're watching somebody else. And they just happened to be parked in my spot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Cassie, probably 2 months go by. I'm going to work, and like I said, transitioning out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my girlfriend get into it. And she throws a mirror at me, cuts her hand. She wants me to take, long story short, she wants me to take her to the hospital. I take her to the hospital, and I catch a domestic battery.
Oh, man.
Yes. I go to jail. I go to bond out the next day. I go to court. When I go to make bond, they put a federal hold on me when I get downstairs to get released.
Oh, boy.
The lady says, the feds are here to pick you up. And I said, what? The feds? She said, yes, the feds are here to pick you up. They have a warrant out for your arrest. And it blew my mind. I was thinking, hell, I'm not on no federal level drug dealing. I ain't got to that level yet. In my eyes, I haven't got to that level yet. My eyes as a federal drug dealer was the John Gotti's, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The cartel
players.
type of dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big players. You know, I ain't pushing no keys and none of that kind of stuff. I'm just low level street dealer trying to make odds and ends and pay my bills and have a few nice things. That's it.
Right.
And they next you know they come in and they take me in the rain, you know, go over there and I meet my attorney, nice lady, Maryland Tribute, very good. You know, even though she worked for them, she was on our side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she told me what the situation was, and she asked me. She said, "Do you remember these 2 dates?" And I remember those 2 dates, and I remember those 2 sales, and I knew right then who it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, when I told you about how they stack those cases on you,
mm-hmm.
even though I was beating all those cases in the state level, didn't know it was going to hurt me in the long run when it became federal.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to arraignment that day, they were throwing these numbers out, 851, this, and this statute, and he's a habitual violator, and blah, 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 he's a menace to society. And I was like, I've never hurt anybody, I have no violent crimes or none of that. And why is this guy talking so bad about me? It's because of my prior history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they would not release me. A lot of guys that I knew that had caught Fed cases got to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy, I never seen my apartment or nothing ever again after that day.
So that was it.
That day
they took you that day.
That day that I caught the domestic battery, that was the last night I was out on the streets.
Wow.
For 8 years. I mean, they took me off the streets, didn't let me go clean my apartment out and none of that kind of stuff. I lost everything. If my family members couldn't get to it, I don't know where it ended up. So wow. I lost a lot. And after 5, you know what I mean? That it happened that quick.
Well, there's no planning for that.
No, there's no way you can plan for that, you know? My parents were shocked. Kids were shocked.
What was tell me, Murph, well, like what with your dad and your mom, how did they react to all that? Because you've been in trouble before, but I'm sure this sounded different to them. Yes.
My mom grew up on the south side of Chicago, so this is normal to her. You know, she was surprised that it was a federal case because she was like me. She didn't think that I was that level.
Mm-hmm.
That is what shocked her. My dad blew his mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dad might have peddled in a little weed in the 70s and the 80s, but that, you know, that's nothing compared to what I did. Mm-hmm. You know, he was never on a level that I was on. And it just blew his mind when he just couldn't understand it, you know. And still to this day, it's a shock to him.
Yeah.
You know.
So Murph, where did they put you? Where did you go when they took you and said, "Hey, you're staying here with us"? How long were you there, and where'd they put you?
My first thing is because of my being in the state, I went into straight survival mode. I knew then I was never going to. They was not going to release me. Mm-hmm. I knew I wasn't going to get no kind of time out on the street to get my affairs together. So I went into survival mode. I got in a penitentiary mode, is what they call it. And I just started to put myself in a situation where I could make some money and survive. And at first, my thing was to get out of the county jail. Mm-hmm. You can't do anything from the county jail.
It's awful.
It's because it's awful. They stay locked down all the time. You know, stuff can happen in the other part of the jail. They lock the whole jail down for no reason. So I needed to get to somewhere where I could have a little bit more daytime freedom. Mm-hmm. So I got them to get me down to CCS as soon as possible. That's like I think I spent 2 weeks in the county, and they came and picked me up and took me to CCA. And then that was my first initial shock to the federal system. Was seeing CCA.
How long did you stay? How long was it until they pulled you up and said, "Hey, here's what your plea is," and you had to make a decision what you're doing?
9 months.
9 months.
Yeah, Cassidy. One thing about me, I knew I was guilty. It didn't take them to tell me that. I knew I was guilty. Mm-hmm. I'm not finna fight you people because I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, and I'm not gonna win. I need to figure out the best case scenario to get out of this trouble. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna tell on nobody. That's not an option. So let's figure out the best deal I can get. So I had a buddy that had did a federal bid day that that we were in our dab together, good friend of ours, Mr. Vinyl Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Mr. Wilson grew up 3 houses down from each other as kids. Yeah. He's a little older than me.
Yeah, I like Wilson.
He was my big homie. He was the one who taught us how to play basketball and football and all those things. Good guy, man. Love him to death. Good guy. And he had already done a federal prison bid, so he coached me through this process. We have to end up in the same unit, and I seen him, and I was like, "Oh, it's a breath of fresh air. Somebody I know." Mm-hmm. And he coached me through the steps. He got that book by the Busted by the Feds, mm-hmm. and it helped. We went through that book, and we went through that chart, and he said, "Okay, G," because that's what they called me on the street. He said, "Okay, G, how many prior convictions do you have?" And I told him, I said, "Man, I've got this many." I think at the time it was something like between 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and said, "God damn." He said, "No wonder they calling out 851. They trying to give you an enhancement mm-hmm. of a 15-year enhancement. So anything over 15 is what you qualify for." And Cassidy, I was just like, I was mind blown. I was mm-hmm. like, what?
Head spinning. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, man, they caught me with 10 lousy grams of methamphetamine. They didn't even actually catch me with it. They just bought it from me. They purchased it from me. Mm-hmm. They never kicked the rate of the house. So they never found any major drugs or money. And they were talking 15 years, 20 years. And he coached me through it. He said, "Listen, but we can get this down to 10. So that's what we decided with was 10 years. And he said, and Vinyl told me, he said, "Bro, the saying in the feds is 10 you win." And that's pretty much what most guys cop to it's 10 years.
Yeah.
Most drug dealers, you have no choice but to cop to 10 years.
Yeah, you get the minimum mandate there, right?
Yeah, they had me in the hold, and I tried to negotiate. I told Maryland to tell them 7 years. I do 7, and she said they laughed at that. He said, "No, it's not enough. So I come back with something different." So they pretty much let me decide my own fate, and I went for 10. I said, "But I want a binding plea agreement on my 10-year bid." which is 11C1C, which keeps when I go to the pre-sentencing investigation and they hear all the bad things I did as a kid, they can't use that against me in court when I go to plea.
Mm-hmm.
So with that lock, the district attorney and them, they all signed off and locked them in. So when they read my PSI in court, the judge could give you an upper departure if she wanted to.
Right.
At that particular time, they can deviate from that.
Oh,
that
yeah.
chart.
That's what you always worry about. You know, everybody says
That's
they got the
what
deal made, then you don't know what you're walking into.
Right. And that's the scary part.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go into court. All the guys that was going into court before me, I kept seeing them. They were coming back. They were thinking they were getting 10 years or getting 7 years or whatever the case may be. And then that pre-sentencing report comes in, and then they get double that. And I was like, man, I couldn't, I didn't want to go through that. So I got that binding plea agreement, and everybody signed off on it, which is by grace of God. That was a blessing from the Lord above. And I just had to set in my mind that I was going to go do the 120 months.
Wow, that's a lot of time. I got 5 years, and it took the breath out of me. Just because you don't, no matter what, you get down to that point, you're worn out. You're agreed that you're going to do the plea. You're hoping for the better deal, and you don't get the better deal. But man, when they finally tell you 120 months, that's just like hit you. I mean, mine was 60. It's just like a ton of weight, just like boom.
Yeah. And I'm a big guy. I thought I could hold my weight. I was like, wow, and it happened so fast.
Well, Murph, did you go from there straight to Leavenworth?
No, I didn't. I actually had a nice little roundabout trip. I got to see America a little bit.
Okay, a little diesel therapy.
How do you actually get diesel therapy? Well, I ended up, when I left CCA, one night they just said, "Hey, Murphy, you B&B, pack your shit. You're out of here in the next couple of hours." So I had everything in my locker. I gave it to a buddy of mine, and we ate a big meal, and they put me in a paper suit and had me sit in the hole for 4 hours in the middle of the night. When I left CCA, Cassidy was a foot of snow on the ground. I had on flip flops, or what do they call them, clogs or whatever.
Yeah. And
literally a paper suit. Did you ever get one of those?
No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that'd be very much comfortable.
Oh man, if you move the wrong way, it tear real easy.
Yeah, you don't want that.
You had no underwear on.
Yeah.
You were completely nude underneath this paper suit. And it's freezing outside. And they had us standing outside to get on the bus, and it's sleeting and snowing. No coats. They had me shackled to a blind guy. So now I got to lead him on the bus. So I ended up going to Oklahoma City Transfer Center.
Are you shackled?
I was in there for about
Are you shackled? Yeah.
We rode a bus all the way there.
Shackled.
3.5 hours, 4 hours, something like that. To Oklahoma, 5 hours.
So you were Murph. I just want to get this right. You were in those clog shoes, those Croc shoes. You had a paper outfit on, and you were shackled.
Right. Shackled.
That just sounds
to
terrible.
A blind guy.
I've been shackled, but I didn't have my paper suit on.
Oh, the paper suit, man. And by the time I got to where I was at, it was barely hanging on me.
Oh my God!
Yes, because you can imagine, because it was raining. All of us was like that. It literally stuck to your body, and if you moved the wrong way, you tore it off you. So, and I was so happy to be getting there and getting out of that little bit of situation, which was miserable, And then you wait 8 hours in a holding tank, and you see them, and they're packing us through Oklahoma City like cattle, man.
Yeah.
Did you ever? You didn't get the experience.
I didn't go through the
City.
Oklahoma thing, but I've heard so much about it, and I'd never heard anything but bad. And it's all the same. It's all the same story, Murph. It's like cattle. You're herded. You're herded here. You're herded there, and you don't know when you're going to leave, and they don't tell you.
Never know nothing. Like you said, I've been on listening to all the podcasts.
Yeah.
And like you said, they don't tell you anything. They handed me a sack lunch and told me to go sit in that room and gave me a piece of paper, made me fill it, and a little bitty pencil, made me fill out my medication and all that kind of stuff. And before you know it, I was upstairs in the unit. And I was stuck in that unit for about 2 months.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Then what did they take
and you know what? I was stuck in that unit for 2 months, and I went 30 minutes up the road to Oklahoma, to El Reno.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, my next stop was El Reno, and I did El Reno was a medium.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little tougher yard to walk on. And but one thing about it was a Kansas yard.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a lot of guys in my region,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of dudes that I knew throughout the game. Meeting other guys from like Kansas City area.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing them through maybe going to bars and clubs and things like that, and just being in that.
They help you get set up, I'm sure. When you got there,
and then guys, and they come right away. You Kansas guys, they're gonna get you all set up. And I had my shorts and shoes, and like you said, it's funny how they knew that I was coming there.
It is funny.
I think they know. I think they knew before I did.
You probably did.
Because it's crazy. I hit the yard, and I do all the administration part. This is the funny thing. I do all the administration part. Now I got to walk clear. They say, okay, the laundry's over there, and have at it. And they gave you your units where you needed to go. So they just put us out on the yard and told us to go to the laundry and pick up our laundry bag. Your big bag.
Wow. So
we're walking across the yard, and there's guys out working, doing their little work details. Cassidy, I do not know how people recognize me. There's a guy that I met years ago in state prison, spotted me all the way across the yard and yelled my name out. Murphy! Like, who in the hell knows I'm here?
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I happen to be going to the unit that he was working in front of. He was watching. It was a white guy by the name of Termite that I knew. It's a small world, man. And he's like, oh, yeah, we've been waiting on you and expecting you, And even though he's a white guy and he runs in the white guy group,
mm-hmm.
he still blessed me.
Yeah.
And when he wasn't supposed to.
Right.
But that was just, we were friends from a prior life, I would say.
Right, from the outside.
Like I said, my guys knew I was coming. They had the shoes and the whatnots ready for me to make my transition a little easier. That first night was pretty tough. Yeah.
What was the unit like you were in?
I was in, I think it was 200 men
mm-hmm.
on each side of the unit. They had double doors where you could go to both sides. I was in A unit. You got top tier, bottom tier, all metal doors. Once they close them doors, they lock. You're locked in there. There's no getting out of that thing. If the guards don't want to show up for work, we just in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no busting that door down. Real claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Feeling,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a 3-man room, 8x10 with 3 guys. So can you imagine?
No.
It's one up, one down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
One person can walk around the room at a time.
Wow.
And that was it.
That's like being in a closet with 3 people.
Right. And then you got a guy who wants to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I got to hear him pissing in the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Him take, or when he got to take a crap, everybody's got to roll over and face the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Miserable, man. I mean, that is no way for a person that I know I did wrong. There's no way for a man that has to live.
No, it feels animalistic, is what it feels like.
It feels like a real cage. Now I know what it felt like to keep my dogs.
Yeah.
In the backyard.
Yeah. So, Murph, how long were you there at Reno?
I did 3.5 years at Reno. I think I got there when I was like 33, 34. And then my points lowered at 36.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost a lot of points. Plus, I had been programming, too.
Right. What all did you do? What all did you do on the programming?
I took a life skills class, a bunch of parenting classes, the typical things that you need to do to get them points down. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them guys was satisfied with being in the medium.
Mm-hmm. Get used to it.
It's a lot more violence there. I never could understand why they felt they liked to be there. I wanted to get away from there as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. I'm not a violent guy, but I can be violent if I need to be. But that wasn't a place for me, Mm-hmm. Even though I got along with everybody, I had a unicorn job. I was a welder for 3 years. I learned how to weld.
Yeah. That's a good thing to know how to do as well. Those guys get paid good money for that.
You want to imagine what they paid us. I make $69 a month for the first 3 months. And then you get your levels and grade 2s and things like that. The most I ever made at Unicorn was probably like $114 a month.
Yeah. And that was a high paying job.
And that was, you were, I was, what they say, I was living high on the hog.
Yeah, living high on the hog. I never knew exactly what that meant, high on the hog, but that means that you were doing well. I think I earned $96 at the food warehouse, and that was a pretty high paying job. I mean, some of those guys that just serve food would get like $15 a month.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Easy. You know about the food warehouse thing. Things tend to fall off the truck.
They fall off the truck. And then, but then it doesn't matter if it falls off the truck. You got to have people know what to do with it.
Yeah, after it falls off the truck.
Exactly.
That's where I come in at.
Exactly.
That's my line of work. But so I just I went from there. I went to Fort Worth, and Fort Worth was a really nice place, as far as a nice scenery yard. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of child molesters. That's when
there's a low.
I got my first. Yeah, that's when I got my first take on the child molesters and how that atmosphere works, which is pretty rough for you guys.
Well, I mean, they're the lowest on the totem pole, and I think they're the guys that do the hardest time for sure. Yes,
they are. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys get stuff taken from them. And then you got a lot of guys that had to have people take them to the store. Mm-hmm. Those guys can, they can't even leave their own dorm room without being escorted by somebody, because if not, they get subject to get robbed, or anything could happen to them.
Was it hard to get Murph? Was it hard to get set up again at Fort Leavenworth, or not Fort Leavenworth, but at
Fort Worth?
Fort Worth.
No, like I said again, they know you're coming.
Yeah.
I was at El Reno with. He had just left there, and he ended up working in the laundry, and people in the laundry know when everybody's coming. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Yeah, bro, we knew you was coming. I got you set up, got all your laundry stuff ready for you." And I was easy transitioning into that atmosphere. My whole thing was, Cassie, at this particular time, I've been on like 4 years, 5 years. I haven't seen any family. Mm. My dad, he doesn't do the prison thing. He's not coming. Mm-hmm. Mom, she lives subject income. A Texas trip would cost her, set her back 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So me and Mom did our over the phone. She wanted to come see, but she just didn't have the money. It's either send you the money or come visit.
Was that tough,
So
Murph, being so unplugged from because you had a close family? Was it?
Oh yeah, man. I'm used to seeing my people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially my dad. You know,
how would you handle?
It just hurt. It just hurt him too much.
I get that.
It just hurt him too much to see me.
Yeah.
Behind bars.
I get
so that's the reason why he went through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How strategy wise, Murph? You know, there's hard days in prison. How did you handle hard days in prison?
I would my hard days. I would cook.
Yeah.
I'd find somebody to cook for. Mm. You know me, Cass. I'd find somebody to cook for.
Yeah.
And those helped me get through.
And you could
my
cook.
hard days. Thank you.
That was a big deal too. I mean, it's hard to explain to people who haven't been in prison, but if somebody can cook in prison, that's a big deal. And,
yes,
and Murph, you could cook in prison.
I survived. It was a good survival mechanism. Believe me.
But I do think that means something though, because you were good at that. And it kind of, on a hard day or having a hard time, it would get your mind focused on something that made you feel good. And that makes sense to me.
Made me feel good. My thing was, I like to please people. Mm-hmm. I'm a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it hurts me because I want everybody to like me and I want everybody to be getting along around me. And you can't please everybody.
No.
I learned that the hard way. You can't try to please everybody, you know.
What was your favorite dish to cook in prison, Murph?
Oh man. Oh God. I like to say my smothered chicken and gravy.
Yeah.
And rice. A lot of guys, man, you would not believe how many bags of chicken I would get, Cassidy, on Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I was cooking in 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah,
making that stuff, you know.
Trash cans, basically.
Yeah, I had a few of them. You know, a couple gallons of grease. Good stinger.
We stick that stinger down there and heat it up.
Yeah, I think. I think your boy Watson left me one.
Watson, he knew what he's doing.
Yeah, I got some of his old cooking equipment when he left.
I'll tell you, Watson was a good man. He was my first day. He looked at me and he was laying on his bed, and he said, "You're going to need some shower shoes." I said, "Okay." He said, because he said, "I don't need any stinky bunky by me." I didn't realize at the time how important those shower shoes were. He had a couple of pair, and he let me have some until I went to commissary. He was a hell of a cook, Watson, too.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. You know, I learned a few tricks from him. You know, especially his fried burritos with the bomb. You remember I was more of a dessert man.
Yeah.
You know, I had remember the fried honey buns?
Oh God, yeah.
They were a hit.
That was huge. That was like crack cocaine in there, especially for movie nights. Yeah.
I made quite a bit of money off those fried honey buns.
You could sell those. Yeah, you could sell those out on the street for a lot of money, let alone in the prison.
Somebody else told me I should take them to the street.
That's right. You should have. So, Murph, we were talking before we were on. So we were in RDAP, and I remember the day that you got hit. Tell me about how that all went down.
Oh man, I remember I was at work at Unicor, And I can't remember the little Mexican guy that clerked up there. Real nice kid. He comes back to my workstation and says, "Hey, man, they just hit you guys as A2." And I was like, "Cause I just got out of RDAP. I've already been out of RDAP for a couple months." And it was like, "Yeah, man, they just hit A2." And I was like, and it was that Friday. You know what happens on Fridays?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the warden comes through and does his rounds.
Yep.
And I knew I had a bunch of shit in my locker. I had got up early enough that Friday morning to get rid of everything. So I was like, all right, I'll just put it in, leave it in my locker. They don't ever search lockers. I'll just ride it out. Usually they just walk through and get on out of there. Well, this guy had his uniform underneath his mattress, and he left a piece of it hanging out. Warden May sees the shirt hanging out. Somebody says, he just says, "Oh, that's where they hide their clothes at now? Instead of hanging them up, flip over all the mattresses." Fortunately, I had my visitation uniform underneath my mattress. And when they flipped it over, they seen that, and I guess I had a remote control on the side of my bed that I had forgot about. And that triggered the search. Well, they made Dr. Wells do the search. Because I was an RDAP alumni, they made Dr. Wells do the search. So when Dr. Wells opened up my locker, and they seen that laptop and DVD player, amongst the other things I had in there, it blew his mind. Dr. Wells, it actually made him look kind of bad because being in RDAP,
right?
We were supposed to learn not to have stuff like that,
right?
And he's looking at me like Mr. Murphy ain't learned shit. It's 9 months he's spending, he's still doing the same thing over. But they don't understand. I wasn't doing nothing. I didn't think that was illegal, but they say it is because of the drug treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Wells actually did me a favor and only wrote me a level 2 shot.
Okay.
Because, you know, the level 1 would have cost me my RDAP.
That's what I was going to say. That would have cost you a year.
It would have cost me that year I just earned.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, Cassidy, I was freaking out.
Oh, I'm sure you were.
I was like, oh, man. And so they called me down there. And when I got to the bubble, the captain was standing there and Warden May and Dr. Wells. And I knew it wasn't no good then. I said, oh, man. I knew I was going to the shoe. And he said, Mr. Murphy, I've been hearing all kinds of stuff about you down here at this camp, cooking and all this stuff. And I said, what are you talking about, Warden, man? I ain't doing nothing. He's like, yeah, I've heard about you and your honey buns. And I was like, what?
Those are famous.
Yeah.
The warden even knew about it. He's probably eating them.
I wouldn't be surprised. So, it wasn't no me denying it. And I was busted red-handed. So I just took my lump and just hope for the best. And he said, yeah, I think it's about time for us to part ways. And he said, I think you need to go back up a level. I said, okay. So, wasn't nothing I could do about it. And I was just hoping that Dr. Wells was going to write me a decent shot.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to find out he's not as bad as people say he is.
Yeah.
He had sympathy for me, and he wrote me a Series 2 shot, which saved my RDAP. And then from there, I was in that shoe.
Tell me about that.
Leavenworth shoe.
Yeah, tell me about the Leavenworth.
Oh, man, looking like Shawshank Redemption type shit. It was terrible. Like I said, insect infested, cold. the walls sweat. We had to put towels along the walls to keep the water, the condensation. There was that much condensation inside your cell because the shower was inside the cell. So when you took a hot shower, all that, had nowhere to go but onto the floor, so your floor stayed wet. I think I had a cold the whole time I was in the shoe. I had the flu. It was like 2 months.
2 months in
Finally,
the shoe.
Huh?
You were 2 months in the hole?
I was 2 months.
Oh, man, Murph. I don't know. I saw guys that would spend 3 or 4 weeks in there. They came back looking different.
Oh, yeah. You look like a refugee when you come back. There's no shaving, there's nothing, none of that. And by the time like I said, I was there 2 months. And then they shipped me out, and they shipped me to Eaglewood in Denver, in Colorado, in Littleton, Colorado. And I got there, same scenario. Guys knew I was coming, so I was set up again. And met a really group of guys, like 3 or 4 good dudes, and I stick with them the whole time I was there. I think I did 2 years there. And we did everything together, basketball, the whole 9 yards, softball thing, all that. And that yard was really nice,
So
you wouldn't even thought it was prison.
Well, I was going to say, Murph, is that where you got released from, was Inglewood?
Yes, that's where I left from.
So
it is.
Like with that amount of time that you had, what did you start feeling like when you were getting close to the door, knowing that you were heading back home?
Oh, a lot of anxiety, just worrying about. My thing was at first was housing. You know what I mean? Knowing like, where am I going to live? Is anybody going to offer me a place to stay to help me get me a place? Because halfway house is only going to keep me for 4 months,
right?
Because I have to do the aftercare,
right?
And which is a joke.
It is
the biggest joke.
I mean, one of the worst things about that aftercare is it makes it hard for you to hold a job down because you got to go to all those different aftercare classes.
Man, I'm glad somebody else understands that other than me, because I work third shift. Well, I worked at a place called Liberty Fruits, which will hire anybody that wants a job. And they hire a lot of felonies. What I did was I picked vegetables and fruit for grocery stores and put it on the truck and send it out to grocery stores. And we worked 12 to 15 hours a day. We weren't allowed to leave or clock out until the job was done. So if we went into the next shift, we just continued to work until all the orders were filled. If it took 15 hours, it took 15 hours.
Wow.
And then I would have to, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would have to go to aftercare at like 9, 10 in the morning. I just got in from work.
Yeah.
Shower, try to get something to eat, and then get on the van and go to aftercare. It was all cast. It was so much.
Yeah.
I'm falling asleep in aftercare. It was rough.
Yeah.
But I got through that 4 months, and then they sent me home on home confinement.
Did you go back with your dad?
No, actually, my dad had moved to Raytown by then.
Okay.
He had bought a house in Raytown.
Who did you go home to?
So I went home to my uncle and auntie's house, which is his brother's house.
Okay.
They built me a room in the basement, gave me a nice place to stay in the basement, did everything that the government asked them to do with the phone system and all of that. And
which is kind of tough. That's one of those things that the BOP, the halfway house, makes somebody if they don't have a phone, they make them put a real phone line in there.
My auntie and them had a landline for years.
So they just had
and
it.
They had the same number for years.
So that wasn't a big deal for them.
So what I would call, actually what I called in and got them on the phone and talked to them, they had just did away. They had said, oh man, we just canceled that thing.
Oh no. Oh no.
So they was like, well, it ain't gonna be no problem, nephew. We got you. We'll hook you back up. And we just want to get you home and get you squared away. And my Uncle Lloyd, my Aunt Barbara were very, very, very big help. They just said, nephew, come here. We got a room. And don't worry about paying no rent, no bills. Just get yourself together. And that's what I did.
Murph, that's such a big deal. I mean, so many guys, the reason why they end back, I think it's 75% after 5 years end up back is because on the first go in, they don't have anywhere to go. The opportunity is nowhere. And so you fall into whatever you can do where you got a situation where you had time to get yourself right. And I mean, I think, Murph, you're in a situation now. I mean, I'm proud of what you've done because you tell me a little bit about what you're doing now.
Well, when I got released, I checked in the WTI.
Mm-hmm.
I went and got my HVAC degree.
Mm-hmm.
I was working at Mars M&M plant as a forklift driver, and I was working at FedEx.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 jobs, and I was going to school at the same time.
Wow.
I had in my mind I was going to do something different with my life, and that's where I started at. And my PO said, man, I don't know how you get any sleep.
Working all the time.
He said, you're up at 7 o'clock to 12 o'clock in school.
Mm-hmm.
I would rush home, get about an hour and a half worth of sleep. Yeah, it has to be at work at 3 at Mars, work to 11, go home, sleep for a couple of hours, and be at FedEx by 4:30 in the morning.
Good
and
God,
work till 7:30.
Wow, that's impressive.
And I did it, dedication,
mm-hmm.
and and drive, and I did it. Now, met a girl, a nice girlfriend. She has 2 boys. One's just graduated from high school, and we have a 9-year-old. And I'm working at Berry's Plastic Process Tech, and I'm having a great time right now, Cassidy. I'm smiling like I always have.
I love it, man. You went through all of that, Murph, and it could have been so easy for you just to say the hell with all of it. All this shit's happened, and I'm done. And you did just the opposite. You did the programming, you did all the other stuff. You came out and you worked yourself into the opportunities that were given to you. And my God, you 2 or 3 jobs, going to school, and now you're in a situation where you can say, man, I can look back and you accomplished going through all of that and surviving.
Yeah, and then when they say in our day, they just tell us it takes about 3 to 5 years. You're right.
Yeah.
If you do it, if you're doing it the right way, and not trying to rush things.
Yeah.
Because I've just now, Cassidy, purchased my first vehicle since I've been home.
Wow.
I'm making car payments.
Yeah.
But
you got it.
It feels good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My little cousin that I helped raise, she gave me a Mustang when I came home. She said, "Cuz, you're gonna need something to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this car."
So you've had good support with your family. I love that.
Yes, man.
That's fantastic.
Many people came out and helped me out, and I thank each and every one of them that's listening right now. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you guys helping me get to where I'm at to this day.
Well, Murph, if I was going to ask you what you want to impart to the listeners out here, what would you say?
I would tell the young guys out there, what shines and glitters is not gold. On the other side of that rainbow, it don't always end up being a pot of gold.
Mm-hmm.
So with saying that, be aware of what you get yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
While you're out here and you got that freedom, enjoy it. Because nothing is like freedom. When it's taken from you and somebody's got to tell you when to go to the bathroom and when to eat, you'll learn to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I remember something that Stroby said, which is my guy. I hope he's listening. I
He'll be
talked to
listening
him in so long. That, you know, me and Stroby won the championship in softball.
You guys are good softball players.
Yeah, that's my guy. That long motorcycle ride that he's talking about,
mm-hmm.
that's my thing too. I get in my truck and just take a drive.
Yeah.
Clear my head and get myself back on track. I'm human. I have my tendencies to want to backslide.
Sure, everybody does.
You know, because it was easier that way.
Yeah.
You know? But just don't always try to take the easy road out, guys. Just grit it out, and in the long run, it'll all work out.
Yep, and you're a testament to that, Murph. You got out, you worked hard, you gritted it out, worked 2 or 3 jobs, went to school. Now you got yourself in a position to where you're smiling and feeling good about being free, being out, and living your life. I love it. Proud of you, Murph.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I'm proud of you. I'm glad that you did this podcast. This is great right here. You know, and I love listening to it.
Well, I appreciate it.
What I do is I put my headphones in at work. I slide my earbuds in, and I secretly listen to you guys.
I love that, Murph. Now you can secretly listen to yourself.
Yeah.
All right, man.
That would be funny just to myself on radio.
All right, man. Murph, thank you so much for being here today. For all of you, thanks for listening. We love the likes and just the followers. And I just put out earlier this week, I've got my book out, Nightmare Success. Hey, if you need something to read, come and get it. Come and get it.
You should send a whole bunch of them to RDAP.
That's what I need to do, Murph.
Donate them to Dr. Wells' program.
There we go. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Right, Nightmare Success, in and out.